She woke up to the soft hum of the city outside her small apartment. The early morning light barely reached the room, cutting through the thin curtains with golden streaks. Her alarm buzzed, and she rubbed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Another day of long hours at the restaurant awaited her, but she had grown used to it. There was a rhythm to her life, even if it was far from easy. She moved quietly so as not to wake her neighbor, who often complained about noise. Making breakfast was simple, just a slice of bread and some tea, but it was enough to start her day. She glanced at the small notebook she kept tucked beside the stove, full of scribbled music notes. It was her private treasure, the part of her life that no one at work knew about. Walking to the restaurant, she passed by familiar streets and faces. The city was alive even this early, with the smell of bread from a nearby bakery and the chatter of people heading to work. She kept her head down, hands in her pockets, thinking about the day ahead. The restaurant was upscale, and the patrons were often demanding, looking for perfection in every dish and service. She had learned to smile politely, to anticipate needs, and to move quickly, though her feet ached by the end of every shift. She liked to imagine she was invisible sometimes, blending into the background while observing the world around her. It helped her feel calm before the chaos of the restaurant hit. Inside the restaurant, the morning routine was familiar. She greeted the manager and the other staff, exchanging brief words. Orders needed to be checked, tables prepared, and the atmosphere set for the early crowd. She moved with purpose, making sure everything looked perfect. Her coworkers were friendly enough, but she never felt completely at ease sharing her personal life. They knew her as the hardworking waitress who never complained, always dependable, and always quiet. She liked it that way. Her secret world existed outside these walls. After her shift began, the restaurant started to fill. Businessmen came in with their briefcases, couples with polite smiles, and groups of friends laughing quietly. She served them all, remembering their favorite drinks and how they liked their meals. She listened to snippets of conversations while moving from table to table, the chatter mixing with the soft music playing in the background. She often imagined herself at that piano she kept dreaming about, her hands flying over the keys, creating music that made people stop and listen. No one here would ever know. She kept that part of herself locked away, like a secret garden. During a brief break, she sat in the small staff room, sipping cold water. Her mind drifted to her piano at home, a modest instrument that had seen better days. She could still hear the melodies she had played countless times, the notes dancing in the quiet of her apartment. Playing piano was more than a hobby. It was a way to escape the routine of her life, to express emotions that words could never touch. She had been playing since she was a child, and though she had never performed in front of an audience, she had grown confident in her abilities over the years. The thought of sharing her music with someone beyond the walls of her tiny apartment filled her with both excitement and fear. The afternoon passed in a blur of orders, polished silverware, and careful attention to every detail. She moved like a shadow, ensuring every guest felt attended to without intruding. The wealthier patrons often asked questions, making small talk about vacations or art, and she responded politely, keeping the conversation light and professional. She noticed how some of them looked at her with curiosity, perhaps seeing more than just a waitress in the uniform. It made her wonder if they could ever imagine the music hidden behind her quiet smile. But those thoughts were fleeting, pushed aside by the immediate demands of the job. As the evening approached, the restaurant grew louder and more chaotic. Reservations came in waves, and the atmosphere became tense with anticipation. She continued her work with practiced grace, yet her mind kept drifting to the piano waiting for her back home. She imagined herself sitting there, the lights dim, the room silent except for the music she created. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the keys under her fingers, the rhythm flowing naturally. It was a secret she cherished, a world where she could be herself without judgment or expectation. After her shift ended, she returned to her small apartment, the streets quieter now. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, dropping her bag onto the floor. The familiar sight of her piano greeted her, worn but dependable. She ran her fingers over the keys, feeling the smoothness beneath her fingertips, and began to play. The music filled the room, carrying with it the emotions of the day, the hopes and dreams she had held close for so long. She lost herself in the melodies, the hours slipping away unnoticed. In those moments, she was not a waitress serving strangers. She was a musician sharing her soul with the world, even if it was only with herself. The night grew late, and the city outside fell silent. She finally stopped, her fingers lingering on the last note. She felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration, knowing that this private ritual gave her life meaning. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a friend that understood her in ways no one else could. She looked around her small apartment, the walls covered in music sheets and notebooks, and smiled. Tomorrow would bring another day at the restaurant, another chance to move unseen among the wealthy patrons. But tonight she had her music, and that was enough. As she prepared for bed, she reflected on her life. There was hardship, yes, but there was also beauty in the quiet moments, in the music that poured from her heart. She knew that somewhere, somehow, her talent could be recognized, that her music could touch others as it touched her. But for now, she allowed herself to simply dream, to imagine a night where the piano would no longer be a secret, where her melodies would be heard beyond the walls of her apartment. She fell asleep with a sense of hope, her mind filled with music and possibilities, unaware that a night unlike any other was approaching, one that could change her life forever. The morning started like any other, with the sun barely peeking through the city skyline. She moved slowly, careful not to disturb the neighbors who were already up, getting ready for their own busy days. Her small apartment felt quiet, almost peaceful, as she made her breakfast and sipped her tea. Even in the calm, there was a flutter of excitement in her chest. Today felt different, though she couldn't put her finger on why. She glanced at her piano from across the room and imagined herself playing in front of an audience, not just the empty walls that had been her witness for so long. By the time she reached the restaurant, the staff were already buzzing with activity. The manager looked stressed, glancing at the schedule and muttering under his breath. She asked politely if everything was all right, and he sighed, explaining that the pianist had called in sick at the last minute. There was no one to fill the slot for tonight's special event, which was expected to be attended by the city's most influential guests. She paused, a sudden thought forming in her mind. Tentatively, she offered to play the piano. The manager stared at her, surprised, and for a moment, she feared she had overstepped. But then he smiled, relieved that someone was willing to help, and agreed. The weight of the opportunity pressed on her chest, and excitement mixed with a nervous flutter that she had not felt in years. Throughout the day, she went through her routine, carrying out her usual tasks with her mind partly elsewhere. She polished silverware, refilled water glasses, and guided patrons to their seats. But every so often she caught herself imagining the piano tonight, the soft glow of the room, and the faces of the guests waiting in anticipation. The thought of performing made her stomach twist, but not in fear alone. There was something thrilling about it, a spark she had only felt in private moments at home. She could hardly wait, though she also dreaded the possibility of making a mistake in front of such an important audience. As the evening approached, the restaurant transformed into a different world. Lights were brighter, tables arranged carefully with crisp linens, and the scent of gourmet meals filled the air. Guests arrived in elegant dresses and tailored suits, carrying the kind of presence that spoke of wealth and influence. She moved among them with practiced composure, taking orders and offering polite smiles. Inside, her heart raced, knowing that soon she would be stepping into a role she had only dreamed of. The piano sat near the center of the room, polished and ready, an instrument that seemed almost to be waiting for her touch. She ran her fingers along the keys discreetly, feeling the familiar texture and letting a small shiver of anticipation run through her. Her co-workers looked at her curiously as she prepared for her performance. They knew she had played at home, but no one had ever seen her perform outside the safety of her apartment. The chatter among the staff was quiet, respectful, as though they sensed this moment was bigger than a simple piano performance. She nodded at them with a nervous smile and made her way to the instrument, every step feeling heavier and lighter at the same time. The murmurs of the guests filled the room, and she could hear the subtle rustle of menus and cutlery as they settled in, unaware of the music about to unfold. Sitting down at the piano, she took a deep breath, letting her hands hover above the keys. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Could she really do this? Could she captivate an audience so different from herself? Then, shaking off the fear, she reminded herself that she had played countless hours alone, honing her skill. She knew the music intimately, knew how it should sound. The first note rang out, soft and deliberate, and she felt a flicker of confidence. The notes flowed into one another, creating a melody that was both gentle and stirring. She noticed the room slowly quieting, the low murmur of conversations fading as the audience became absorbed in the sound. As she continued, her nerves began to melt away. She was no longer the waitress behind the counter. She was a musician, sharing her heart through the keys. The guests, who had arrived expecting an ordinary night, were drawn into the music. Some closed their eyes, swaying slightly to the rhythm, while others leaned forward, fascinated by the emotion in each note. She could see the change in their faces, a mix of surprise and admiration. Every chord she played seemed to build a bridge between her world and theirs, a connection forged through the simple beauty of music. Her mind drifted to memories of playing alone at home, the times she had imagined an audience applauding her, and now it was real. She felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of validation and joy she had never experienced before. The piano responded beneath her fingers, as if it too understood the significance of the moment. She allowed herself to be fully present, losing track of time, immersed in the ebb and flow of the music. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with exhilaration, the thrill of stepping into a new chapter of her life. The audience's reaction became more visible with each passing minute. Conversations had completely stopped, and all eyes were on her. Whispers of amazement drifted through the room as they realized the raw talent sitting before them. She noticed a few guests exchanging glances, nodding in approval, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and delight. The music carried her beyond the walls of the restaurant, beyond the crowded tables, and into a place where nothing existed but her and the piano. She felt free, powerful, and vulnerable all at once, a rare combination that made her performance unforgettable. When the final note lingered in the air, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then the applause began, soft at first, then growing louder, more enthusiastic. She sat there, heart pounding, eyes wide, trying to take it all in. The room had shifted in an instant. The wealthy guests, who had entered expecting a regular evening, were now captivated by the talent of a waitress they had previously overlooked. The manager came over, his face beaming with pride, though he tried to hide his own awe. Her co-workers gathered, congratulating her in hushed tones, aware of the significance of what had just happened. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. She returned to her duties, but everything felt different now. Every glance from a guest, every whispered compliment, carried a new weight. The performance had changed the way people saw her, but more importantly, it had changed the way she saw herself. She had taken a risk, faced her fears, and found her voice in a world that often overlooked those who worked quietly behind the scenes. That night, she went home feeling lighter, happier, and more hopeful than she had in years. Back in her apartment, she sat at the piano again, replaying the evening in her mind. Each note she had played carried the memory of the astonished faces, the applause, and the validation that her music mattered. She realized that this was just the beginning. Opportunities could come, doors might open, and perhaps her music could reach even further. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the moment, knowing she had seized a chance that many would never have dared to take. She felt proud, grateful, and inspired, ready to dream bigger, practice harder, and embrace whatever came next. It had been an unexpected opportunity, a night that would be remembered, and a turning point she would carry with her forever. She took a deep breath as she approached the piano, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was filled with the soft hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the rustle of fine fabrics. Everyone seemed so poised, so confident in their world of wealth and influence, while she felt a mix of excitement and terror twisting inside her. She reminded herself that she had practiced for years in her small apartment, that the music flowed naturally when she allowed it to. She adjusted her posture, ran her fingers lightly over the keys, and felt the familiar texture under her fingertips. For a moment, she closed her eyes, imagining that she was alone, that this was just another quiet night in her tiny apartment. Then she opened them and faced the audience, feeling the weight of their expectation pressing gently against her. The first note rang out soft and deliberate. She started with a simple melody, one that gradually grew richer and more confident as she settled into the music. The audience, initially polite and distant, began to quiet down, their attention drawn by the sincerity and skill in her playing. She noticed a few heads tilting slightly, eyes narrowing in focus, as if trying to understand where this music was coming from. The sound seemed to fill every corner of the room, carrying with it not just notes but emotion, a story told without words. Her fingers danced over the keys, remembering the countless hours she had spent perfecting every movement, every transition, every pause. As the melody progressed, her confidence soared. She let herself be carried by the music, allowing each chord to speak the feelings she often kept hidden. There was nervousness at first, but it melted away, replaced by a sense of freedom. She could feel the rhythm in her chest, the flow of emotion guiding her hands. She played not for applause or recognition, but because the music had always been a part of her, a companion in both joy and sorrow. She noticed subtle changes in the audience. A guest leaning forward, a hand resting lightly on the table, a faint smile appearing on someone's lips. They were listening, really listening, and it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The piece shifted, moving from soft, gentle notes to a more powerful, expressive passage. She could see the effect it was having on the room. Some guests closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others exchanged glances, nodding slightly, as though sharing a silent acknowledgement of her talent. The restaurant, which had been bustling with conversation and activity just moments ago, was now completely absorbed by the performance. She felt a rush of exhilaration, knowing that her music had captured their attention, that the barrier between her modest life and their world was, even for a moment, suspended. It was as though the piano and she were telling a story that everyone could feel, even if they didn't know its origin. Her mind drifted to memories of playing alone at home, to late nights when the world was silent and she could pour all her emotions into the keys. Now, those private moments had transformed into a shared experience. She could sense the emotions of the audience responding to the music, each chord resonating with something personal in them. It was not just a performance. It was a conversation without words, an exchange of feeling and energy. She noticed a few guests sitting straighter, eyes glistening, caught in the spell of the melody. Each note she played carried the weight of her dreams, her struggles, and her hope that one day, her talent would be seen. The crescendo built, and she allowed herself to fully embrace the moment. She had never played for anyone like this before, and yet, she felt completely at ease. The piano keys were familiar, almost like old friends, and her fingers moved instinctively, guided by a deep connection to the music. She felt her heart racing, not from fear, but from the thrill of sharing something so personal and intimate. The audience was silent, hanging on each note, completely captivated by the unexpected brilliance of the performance. She realized that she had managed to transform an ordinary evening into something extraordinary, not just for herself, but for everyone in the room. When the final notes echoed into silence, there was a moment where no one moved, as though the audience collectively held its breath. Then, slowly, a hand clapped, followed by another, and soon the entire room erupted in applause. She sat frozen for a moment, stunned by the reaction. The sound was overwhelming, powerful, and deeply gratifying. She had shared her music, her soul, and they had responded with such warmth and appreciation. She allowed herself a small smile, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. The applause continued, and she finally stood, bowing slightly, her hands still trembling from the intensity of the performance. The reactions of the guests were immediate and heartfelt. Many approached her with compliments, their voices full of admiration and surprise. Some asked her questions, curious about her background and training, while others simply expressed how moved they had been by her music. She answered politely, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment she had never known before. Her co-workers gathered around, their faces beaming, whispering congratulations and words of encouragement. The manager came over, shaking his head in amazement, admitting that he had not expected such a stunning performance from someone who usually worked behind the counter. It was a moment of recognition, validation for years of quiet dedication and passion. After the applause settled, she returned to her duties, but everything felt different. The patrons she served now looked at her with new eyes, a mixture of respect, curiosity, and admiration. Conversations with guests became easier, lighter, and more genuine. She felt a shift within herself as well, a growing confidence that she could carry into other aspects of her life. The night had changed her in ways she could not yet fully understand. It was a turning point, a moment when her hidden talent had been revealed and embraced by those who had the power to open new doors. Once the event ended and the last guests had left, she helped tidy up the restaurant, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the performance in detail. Every note, every gesture, every expression on the faces of the guests was etched into her memory. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had not only met the challenge but exceeded it. The music had connected her to the audience in a way words never could, creating a bond that transcended social boundaries and personal histories. It was a reminder that talent and passion, when shared honestly, could touch anyone, anywhere. Back in her apartment later that night, she sat at the piano again, letting her fingers glide over the keys as she replayed parts of the performance. The melodies carried the memory of the evening, the applause, and the faces of the captivated guests. She smiled, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. For the first time, she truly understood the power of her gift, the impact it could have beyond the quiet solitude of her home. She thought of the possibilities ahead, the doors that might now open, and the ways her music could reach more people. But for now, she simply allowed herself to bask in the moment, to savor the joy and fulfillment that came from sharing her heart through the piano. It had been a night to remember, one that would linger in her memory and in the hearts of those who had witnessed it for a long time. The night air felt cooler as she stepped out of the restaurant, the streets quiet after the long day. She could still feel the lingering excitement from her performance, the warmth of the audience's applause echoing in her chest. Her co-workers walked beside her, speaking in hushed tones about how impressive she had been. The manager smiled, shaking his head as if he could hardly believe it himself. For the first time, she felt that her talent, something she had kept private for so long, had been recognized and appreciated by people who could make a difference in her life. The following morning, she returned to work with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She did not know what to expect, but the air felt different somehow. The staff greeted her with quiet admiration, some offering encouraging smiles. The manager approached her and mentioned that several guests had asked specifically about her and her performance. Some had even left their contact information, hoping to hear her play again. She felt a mixture of disbelief and excitement. She never expected such attention, and the idea that her music could lead to real opportunities was both thrilling and intimidating. Throughout the day, she carried herself differently, a new confidence settling into her movements. While taking orders and serving tables, she noticed subtle changes in the guests' behavior. People who had previously glanced at her as if she were invisible now engaged with her politely, their curiosity visible in the way they spoke and listened. Compliments were whispered discreetly, smiles were offered more freely, and a few patrons asked if she would be playing music at upcoming events. Every acknowledgement, every appreciative glance, fueled a growing sense of possibility within her. She realized that the small world she had lived in, filled with routine and quiet determination, had suddenly expanded into something larger and more promising. By the afternoon, the restaurant manager approached her with a more serious proposal. He explained that a few influential guests, impressed by her performance, had suggested she consider performing professionally. They were willing to arrange private events, small concerts, and even recordings if she was interested. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, and excitement. Could she really take this step? Could she leave the safety of her job and the familiar routine of the restaurant for something uncertain? Yet, deep inside, a part of her had always dreamed of this moment, imagined herself stepping beyond the walls of her apartment, sharing her music with the world. Now, that dream seemed within reach. During her break, she found a quiet corner to sit and reflect. She thought of all the nights she had spent practicing alone, pouring her heart into the piano, perfecting each note in silence. She remembered the small victories, the moments when a melody flowed effortlessly, and the tiny frustrations when it did not. All of those experiences had led her here, to this moment when strangers were recognizing her talent and offering opportunities she never imagined. She felt a sense of gratitude for the struggles, for the patience, and for the quiet determination that had kept her going. Later in the day, she encountered one of the guests who had attended the previous night's event. The guest smiled warmly, recalling specific moments from her performance and expressing how moved they had been. They spoke with genuine curiosity and encouragement, asking if she had ever considered pursuing music professionally. She responded with a mixture of humility and excitement, sharing a little about her journey and her love for the piano. The conversation was brief but impactful, leaving her feeling inspired and more determined to explore the possibilities now unfolding before her. After her shift ended, she returned home, carrying the weight of the day's events and the buzz of new possibilities. She sat at her piano, letting her fingers dance over the keys, replaying the melodies that had captured the audience's attention. Each note seemed to affirm that her music mattered, that the emotions she poured into the piano could touch others deeply. She imagined future performances, the faces of people who would listen, and the ways her music could connect with the world beyond her apartment. A sense of purpose filled her, stronger than any she had felt before. In the following days, her life began to shift gradually but noticeably. She received invitations to perform at private gatherings, small events, and even some more public venues. Each opportunity was approached with care, as she considered how to balance her responsibilities at the restaurant with the growing demand for her talent. She found herself practicing more intensely, refining her technique and exploring new pieces that could showcase her range. Her evenings, once quiet and routine, became filled with music, preparation, and a growing excitement for what was to come. Her relationships with coworkers also began to change. They spoke with admiration, asking her questions about her music and the attention she was receiving. Some expressed pride, while others were inspired to pursue their own passions in small ways. She noticed that the atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted subtly. She was no longer just a waitress performing routine tasks, but someone with a story, a talent, and a future worth noticing. This recognition, though small in the grand scheme of life, was transformative for her sense of self and her confidence. One evening, a music agent who had been at the restaurant for a private event approached her after hearing about her performance. They spoke enthusiastically, outlining possibilities for concerts, recordings, and teaching opportunities. She listened carefully, her mind racing with both excitement and doubt. The idea of stepping fully into the world of music, leaving behind the familiarity of the restaurant, was daunting. Yet, the encouragement she received, combined with the validation of her talent, gave her a newfound determination. For the first time, she seriously considered a life where her music could be more than a private passion. As weeks passed, the opportunities grew, and she began to navigate the delicate balance between her current job and the budding promise of a musical career. Each performance, each small audience, strengthened her confidence and honed her skills. She found herself thinking less about fear and more about the joy of sharing her music, about the lives she could touch through her melodies. She began to dream bigger, imagining concerts, collaborations, and the chance to inspire others who, like her, had quietly nurtured a talent in the shadows. Through it all, she remained grounded, remembering the journey that had brought her here. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with uncertainties and risks, but the events of that night had shown her that taking a chance could lead to unexpected and life-changing results. The support from those who recognized her talent, combined with her own dedication and courage, created a sense of possibility that she had never experienced before. It was a pivotal moment in her life, the night her music had reached beyond the walls of the restaurant and into the hearts of people who had the power to help her dreams take shape. At the end of each day, she returned to her apartment and sat at her piano, letting the music flow freely, reflecting on the interactions, opportunities, and encouragement she had received. Each note carried the memory of the audience's reaction, the applause, and the newfound recognition of her talent. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and determination, knowing that her journey was only beginning. The experience had transformed her understanding of what was possible, teaching her that talent, persistence, and courage could open doors she never imagined. She slept each night with a renewed sense of hope, eager for the next step in a life that was finally starting to match the dreams she had always held close. The following months felt like a dream unfolding slowly and beautifully. She continued to work at the restaurant for a while, but the opportunities that had begun to appear after her performance grew steadily. Invitations to play at private events, local gatherings, and even a few small concerts began to arrive regularly. Each performance gave her a new sense of purpose, a growing confidence that her talent could truly touch the lives of others. She approached each opportunity with care, ensuring that she balanced her responsibilities while stepping further into a world she had once only imagined from the quiet of her apartment. She spent hours practicing, refining her technique, and exploring new pieces that challenged and inspired her. Each day, she felt herself growing as a musician, learning not just how to play, but how to convey emotion through every note. The music was no longer just a private escape. It had become a bridge between her heart and the world around her. She found joy in the preparation as much as in the performance itself, realizing that every practice session was a building block for something larger. Even the simplest melodies now carried the weight of her ambition and the excitement of possibility. Her life began to change in subtle and profound ways. Friends and acquaintances she had never expected to notice her talent began to reach out, expressing admiration and interest. Some offered guidance, connections, and encouragement that opened doors she had never thought possible. She remained humble, remembering the long nights spent alone at her piano, the quiet moments of doubt and determination that had shaped her journey. Every compliment and opportunity reminded her of the path she had walked to get here, and she embraced each one with gratitude and careful thought. As she performed for more people, the impact of her music became increasingly apparent. Audience members often approached her afterward, sharing personal stories of how a particular piece had touched them. Some admitted they had been moved to tears, while others spoke of renewed hope, joy, or inspiration. These reactions filled her with a sense of fulfillment that went beyond recognition or applause. She realized that the music she had once kept private could now inspire and uplift others, a gift far greater than she had imagined. It was a profound confirmation that her passion had purpose, and that she had made the right choice in stepping forward. The media began to take notice as well. Local newspapers and online platforms featured her story, celebrating the unlikely journey of a waitress whose talent had captivated influential guests. Interviews were scheduled, and she spoke candidly about her beginnings, her dedication, and the quiet determination that had brought her to this point. She remained grounded, careful not to let the sudden attention distract her from her music. The recognition was exciting, but it was always secondary to the joy she felt when playing, when creating a connection through each note, each melody, each pause. Through it all, she continued to reflect on her journey. She remembered the modest apartment where she had practiced alone, the hours of perseverance, and the quiet hope that her music might one day be heard. She thought about the night when everything changed, the performance that had captivated a wealthy audience and opened the first door. That night was a turning point, but the months that followed taught her that true success required patience, continued dedication, and the willingness to embrace opportunities as they arose. Each step forward was a reminder that talent alone was not enough, but that passion combined with persistence could create extraordinary results. She also found herself helping and inspiring others who had hidden talents. Young musicians, friends, and even strangers began to reach out, seeking guidance and encouragement. She shared her story openly, hoping to show that humble beginnings did not limit one's potential. She encouraged them to practice, to remain patient, and to believe in the power of their own abilities. In doing so, she discovered a new dimension to her journey. Not only was she growing as a musician, but she was becoming a source of inspiration and support for others, a role that gave her great satisfaction and purpose. Her performances grew more confident, more expressive, and increasingly professional. She began collaborating with other musicians, exploring new genres, and experimenting with different styles of music. Each collaboration was an opportunity to learn, to expand her skills, and to reach new audiences. The shy, quiet waitress who had once played only for herself was now stepping into a world where her music was celebrated, where she could share her heart openly and impactfully. She marveled at how far she had come, understanding that her success was built on the foundation of years of quiet dedication and unwavering belief in herself. Despite her growing success, she remained grounded in the things that had always mattered. She maintained her humility, her kindness, and her genuine appreciation for the people who had supported her along the way. She never forgot the long hours at the restaurant, the small victories and setbacks, and the nights spent practicing alone. Those experiences had shaped her, teaching her resilience, patience, and the value of hard work. They were the roots that allowed her talent to flourish, and she carried them proudly as she stepped further into the public eye. In time, her story became a source of inspiration for many, a reminder that even the most unlikely paths can lead to remarkable outcomes. Her life had been transformed not just by recognition or opportunity, but by the courage to share her passion with the world. She understood that talent, when nurtured with patience and shared with sincerity, could create moments that touch hearts and change lives. She embraced this understanding fully, allowing it to guide her in every performance, every practice, and every interaction. As she reflected on her journey, she realized that the night she had first played for the influential guests was only the beginning. It had opened a door, but her continued dedication and passion had carried her further than she ever imagined. The music that had once been her private refuge had become a bridge to the world, connecting her with people, experiences, and opportunities that enriched her life in countless ways. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for every challenge, every moment of doubt, and every note she had played in solitude, recognizing that they had led her to a life filled with purpose, joy, and fulfillment. Each night, as she sat at her piano and let the music flow, she felt the echoes of the past and the possibilities of the future intertwine. She thought of the restaurant, the wealthy guests, and the quiet moments of practice that had shaped her. She thought of the people she had inspired, the audiences she had touched, and the opportunities that had grown from a single courageous step. Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride, gratitude, and anticipation. The life she had once dreamed of was now unfolding before her, shaped by her talent, dedication, and the courage to step into the light. The journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, higher expectations, and moments of doubt along the way. Yet, she now faced them with confidence, knowing that she had already proven to herself what she was capable of. The piano remained her constant companion, the instrument through which she expressed her heart and connected with others. Each performance, each note, and each melody was a celebration of her journey, a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and the courage to pursue one's dreams. Looking back, she realized that her life had been transformed in ways she could never have predicted. From the quiet apartment where she practiced alone to the glittering rooms filled with applause and admiration, she had traveled a path that was both unexpected and extraordinary. Her music had become a part of the world, touching hearts and inspiring others, and in doing so, it had also shaped her own life in profound ways. She understood that true fulfillment came not just from recognition, but from the joy of sharing one's gift, embracing opportunities, and staying true to oneself. She smiled as she played the final notes of the evening, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and peace. Her journey had been remarkable, full of quiet determination, courage, and unexpected triumphs. The night that had begun as just another shift at the restaurant had transformed her life, opening doors to a future she had only dreamed of. She knew that whatever challenges or opportunities lay ahead, she had the skill, passion, and heart to face them. Her life was no longer defined by routine or modest expectations, but by the music she created, the people she touched, and the courage she had shown in sharing her gift with the world. It was truly a night to remember, one that marked the beginning of a life filled with promise, purpose, and the unforgettable power of music.